Hello, hello, Web3 panelists. We're excited, and guests, very excited to have you back. Some of you showed up. So the second shift, glad to see some familiar faces. Again, my name is Sasha Wallinger, founder of Blockchain Style Lab. Happy to be hosting this room today, Web3 room. As I said this morning, very happy to see some of these Web3 faces. Maybe they're learned or inquisitive, and I think we have an excellent panel for you to learn a little bit more. The name of the panel, as you can see, is Redefining the Web3 and Accelerating the Metaverse. We have Yuan here to introduce the rest of his guests, and welcome and thank you, and there'll be time for questions afterwards.
Thank you. So welcome to our panel. So I would like to welcome our panelists to take a seat. So eventually we have enough seats on the stage. So take your seats, please. Should I sit here? Yeah, anyway, so. We're tight. I guess, yeah, it is tight. So this panel is in the Web3 track, so that's why we created the title for this panel, like Redefining Web 3.0 and Accelerating Metaverse. And we will be addressing like, will the next version of World Wide Web be semantic, 3D, decentralized, intelligent, immersive, or whatever? So first of all, let me introduce me and our panelists. So myself, I'm the president of the IEEE Standards Association, and I myself happen to be have been working in the area of XR and Metaverse for like more than 20 years, although I didn't call that Metaverse before. So I give our panelists, each of you, like a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, starting from Tom.
Oops, okay. So I'm Tom Coughlin, and so I'm actually storage and memory guy by day. But I've been interested in the metaverse and a lot of these things for quite a while. I'm also the president-elect for the IEEE, which is the largest technical professional organization in the world, for 420,000 members in 190 countries. So this is definitely one of those themes, one of those things that I think is going to have a big impact on mankind, and that working in this helps fulfill IEEE's mission of technology for the benefit of humanity. Thanks. So, he's got our own.
Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Barkin. I'm the CEO of Lamina One. You may have heard our co-founder, Neil Stevenson, speak this morning. We're a layer one blockchain built for the open metaverse. I have about 20 plus years at the intersection of emerging technology and entertainment. Spent about 5 years at Magic Leap, driving content and the platform design. And then I was also at MSG Sphere, which some of you may know. It's a multi-billion-dollar immersive venue opening in Las Vegas in the fall. So thanks for having me.
Neil?
Hey everyone, my name is Neil Trevett. My day job is at NVIDIA. I'm VP of Developer Ecosystems there. I also have been the president of the Kronos Group for over 20 years, which is a standards organization doing things like Vulkan, OpenGL, OpenXR, GLTF, kind of related to the metaverse. And most recently, Kronos helped bootstrap the Metaverse Standards Forum, so I'm now the president of that. We have over 2,500 members there, so it shows a lot of interest in the metaverse.
Tom?
Good afternoon, everyone. Tom Furness here. I'm the token academic in the group, and but also happy to be here. I'm the founder and current chairman of the board of the Virtual World Society that was founded originally in 1993, but got reinvented a few times along the way. And prior to becoming an academic in 1989, I spent 23 years working for the Department of Defense, where we developed what we know today as virtual reality and augmented reality. I was flying in fighter airplanes, testing this equipment from 1966 on for a while. And so then it evolved to what it is today. So I don't know anything about Web 3.0, but I do know that we need it in order to move our minds. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Tom. Sri?
Thank you, Yuan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sri Chandrasekaran. I work as a practice lead for the foundational technology practice. So the foundational technology practice within the IEEE Standards Association is a horizontal practice, and what we look at within the practice is what we call as building trust in systems, and that trust being driven through identity, privacy, and cybersecurity. I also lead the IEEE office in India and also manage the Asia Pac standards development activities. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Do you hear me? So I'm the fourth person with the same IEEE affiliation here. I chair the IEEE blockchain technical community. So, when you hear about, Web3, there's like two different communities talking about Web3 3.0. One is coming from the traditional folks who developed internet, web, and all that, like, Tim Berners-Lee. But then there's the other community, like blockchain, like you heard of NFTs, blockchain. Those communities are talking about Web3 as well. There's actually a clash happening between these two communities in terms of what it means, Web3. And I closely track the one on the blockchain space, so I can share my perspectives from that angle. And by the way, I've been to like over 130 conferences in the blockchain space. I've spoken, panelists and stuff, so I can bring some perspective from there. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I start our questions, I think in order to talk about redefining Web 3.0, let me give you some background. So I have been working on defining Metaverse for quite a while. So it has been a struggle, like trying to make everybody happy is impossible. So I'm trying to make everybody unhappy. So like equally unhappy. So it's like I started with defining Metaverse as well. There are three different types of Metaverse. From the experience view, it could be either a digital and a different universe, which is basically virtual reality, or it could be a digital and digital extension of our current universe, which is basically augmented reality, or it could be a digital counterpart or digital copy of our current universe, which could be a digital twin. But I recognize that many other people are talking about Web3 is like a sort of metaverse. So I call that a functional view. So from the functional view, I don't say that is a definition, because if you say Web3 is metaverse, why don't you call that meta web, right? But anyway, so functional view, people say metaverse could be the next version of World Wide Web, Web 3.0. Please note that I'm using the term Web 3.0 in this graphics, and also for the title of this panel, I'm not using the term Web 3, because Web 3 is sort of more narrowed, defined by Gavin Wood as the decentralized web. But when we're talking about Web 3.0, it's naturally the next version of after Web 2.0. So we are going to define Web 3.0 today. And also people say that like Metaverse could be the next generation of the internet. So from the academia perspective, web is apparently slightly different from the internet. And also people say that Metaverse could be the next stage of digital transformation. So I just give you as a background that in order to define Metaverse, we see lots of different angles, different perspectives, different people come up with different definitions. Now, when we're talking about the Web 3.0, I think that's, well, another, I would say, pain for us to address. So my question to our audience, well, first of all, to our panelists is like, because I invited our all-star panelists from different perspectives, I believe they can collectively provide a comprehensive view on this topic. So my question for our, first question for our panelists would be, what features, when we are talking about Web 3.0, it was started, I think, back in 90s, defined by Tim Berners-Lee as something like, semantic web. And then we know Web 3 defined by Gavin Wood. And there are other terms like Web 3D. Many other people believe the next generation of web should be 3D. And also, how about the decentralization? How about the intelligence? How about immersive? So my question is, what features does the next version of World Wide Web has to offer? Semantic, 3D, decentralized, intelligent, immersive, anything else? Or let's say a mixture of everything, a.k.a. Metaverse. And I would also ask our panelists to pick their top three. So who want to go first? Like,
Since you don't know anything about Web3,
Yep.
I'll do the idiot's guide for you guys. Well, to me, it's just an evolution, from where we started to where we are now. Certainly we have more capability, different applications we can run on the web. When we talk about the spatial web, this means that we're adding another whole level of complexity, but we're moving minds. The whole idea, I believe, is that we as individuals can connect through some interface into this amazing resource to move our minds and by moving our senses. Now, moving our senses, we've pretty much been concentrating on visual and acoustic up to this time. But even then, we've just been just scratching the surface with visual. Because let's face it, we really don't have the bandwidth yet to really get the kind of sensing that we get in the real world. Now, a lot of that is because of what we need to have at the user end. And so that's why I think that when we think about the web, we need to think about three pieces of it. There's certainly the content and some of the APIs and SDKs that spit out there that let us develop these kind of experiences. But then on the other end of it, here we are as humans, we have incredible capability. You know, probably we're only using about 20% of the capability we have, even from a sensory standpoint. But then there's something I believe that needs to go in between us. I don't want this to be long-winded, but when I was working on the super cockpit is a cockpit that you wear. You put on this magic flight suit, you put on a magic helmet, magic gloves, and now you're in a virtual environment, operating in a real airplane, flying at twice the speed of sound, pulling G's to the boundaries of consciousness and being shot at the same time. It's sort of like a busy day in New York City. And so the problem was you needed to have something in between you and the outside world. Let's say that the web is the outside world. Here you are. How are you going to get into it and use it? So I'm advocating that we think about it not as the web's out there and then we have the tools to access the web. I think there needs to be intelligence in between, because in my super cockpit was what we call a pilot intent inference engine. It was sitting there as your companion. It's like R2-D2 in the rear cockpit, trying to organize what's going on based upon your intent, inferring what you're trying to do and organizing the way that that web is being accessed. Now, to me, that's more important than actually what we're calling Web 3.0. It's the way we access things that are going to empower us. Yes, the content has to be there and the connectivity has to be there, but we need to be using these new tools to actually move our senses in a way that makes sense for us to be better when we take the headset off. That's the end game, is how does this make us better, rather than just giving us some cotton candy to play with along the way.
You want to go?
Oh, you go first.
All right, I'll do the decentralization one and then you can pick up. All right. So I think one of the absolute mandatory pieces is that it's got to be an open model. And that's because as the web evolves to be more immersive and spatial, and we have all these sensors that are collecting a ton of data about the way that we move, about our biorhythms, about the way that our house looks. That's a ton of sensitive data and a ton of vulnerability. And I think we gave up a lot during the Web 2 era in the name of access and global access and information and entertainment. But we really need to make sure as we move forward that that we're privileging the individual again and giving people back their data to own and protecting that, and then also writing the economics associated with publishing and navigating the web. And I think one of the things, somebody, I think it was you that had mentioned identity, this is a massive issue. Like, we cannot really solve this and have the open metaverse that we imagine without addressing the identity issue, whether it's sovereign or self-sovereign.
So the thing I was going to bring up is, another feature of this is going to be, what is our infrastructure going to support? And that's both in the cloud, but also local infrastructure. And we face, a number of challenges in terms of what you can do. There's enormous creativity. This is both hardware and software. There's enormous creativity and stuff you can do, but if I have something running on a battery, how long is that battery going to last? It's going to give me a good experience, for example. But another part of that is, I think, tying into the whole privacy thing is how can we make sure that something's real? You know, that if it's fiction, fine, it's fiction. But if it's not fiction, how do you verify that? Maybe that's a place where blockchain can play a role, for example.
For sure.
So I think there's, you know, there's basically it could be anything, but what it will be is what our capabilities allow to work, and also what's popular, what catches people's imagination, and what they want to do.
You?
So it was very interesting when we formed the Metaverse Standards Forum. We polled the whole membership, 2,500 companies, as to what were the most important things that they wanted to ensure that we were working on for the Metaverse. There's lots of technical topics, but the number one topic by quite a large margin was privacy, security, and identity. And it really shows, I think, what a lot of us are talking about here. We have to be able to trust this platform, and I think decentralization is going to be a key part of that. Decentralization, I think, is also going to be key because AI is going to be the pixie dust that's sprinkled over everything in Web3, and user-generated content for 3D is suddenly going to really become possible where it hasn't been before. It's been the holy grail for many of us working for a long time. AI is going to change there's not enough professional designers in the universe to fill up the metaverse with content. We need the users to do it, and decentralization is going to be the way that they can get their dues. I know I've heard Neil speak about it, and you know, he's right on there. The other one that's near and dear to my heart, though, is 3D. You know, and how are we going to get 3D into the web in the next generation? It's a very interesting question to me, whether are we going to continue to do it the way we do it now? You know, WebGL, WebGPU are awesome. WebXR, built over OpenXR, is awesome. But we're still taking 3D into essentially a 2D browser. And I'm wondering, I don't know the answer, I'm just wondering how it's going to work out. Are we going to continue to evolve and bolt things onto a 2D browser, or are we going to need like a true 3D browser? It's a very interesting question.
So you have a question there. It says, can you pick top three? I'm going to break that question by picking one, a mixture of everything.
Sure.
Pick only one. So what I hear, like, and I mentioned about these two different communities talking about, Web3, Yuan mentioned. So let me try to clarify. So the one community, the blockchain folks, by the way, all the blockchain conferences happening last year, now they have changed the name to Web3. Now it's all Web3, whatever summit, Web3 Europe summit area, whatever. They don't have the .o. It's just Web3 right next to it, right? So that's the blockchain community. You know, basically, if you ask them, they would add everything, all the terms like your decentralization, privacy, security, ownership, NFTs. Like any term that like DeFi, DAO, I mean, some of these folks here may be wondering what these terms are, but these are all the concepts that's been around in the blockchain space the last decade or so. And they just throw in all these terms into this bucket. They call Web3 bucket. And as I said, every conference this year that I've been to is all called Web3, most of them, the blockchain ones. Now, one common thing is the ownership, right? You hear from this here. And of course, Yuan talked about the Web 3.0, like the folks who develop the internet, the web internet people like Windsurf and Tim Berners-Lee, they're talking about Web 3.0. So you need to at least understand there's two different things going on here. Just Web 3 coined by Gavin Wood, and Web 3.0, I don't know who coined the Web 3.0, probably Tim Berners-Lee or maybe many people. So there's two communities driving these things. And the common thing I see between these two communities, I hear this ownership. They're talking about ownership like, Web 2.0, the data is owned by big companies, and Web 3.0, we should have some ownership on the data, like identity, even like assets, like, we can monetize on the data. So that's the only common theme I've seen so far. Of course, the other things like decentralization, I don't want to get into it now because I'll take up a lot of time. Maybe the next round I'll share more about that. Let others speak about it.
Well, by the way, decentralization is another, I would say,
confusing term.
Confusing.
People
We need to
still-
define decentralization as well. So,
I was going to pick decentralization, so we just killed it now. So Okay, so I come from a hardware background. I'm a bit more grounded. So some of the work that some of the work that we do within the IEEE, and we call it the spatial web. There's a there's a plug for IEEE. There's a work going on 2874, and one of the things we have really begun to understand is how can we define semantic ontologies, right? Before you start building applications, how can you get the terminology, the taxonomy, the ontology correct? And we see that in emerging applications, there's a constant conflict. People, he just spoke the example of Web 3 and Web 3.0, but if you go a level deeper, a lot of same phrases mean different things, right? So I think getting the syntax, the semantic objects is very important. And I do agree that we are living in a world where the connectivity is, super scaling. So without decentralization, nothing is going to work, So for me, Web 3.0 is an interactive web where, you can immerse yourself. So I think a couple of key features I would pick up is semantic and decentralization. And I know it's being used quite a lot in the blockchain context, but in some sense, it is quite obvious. You cannot go into a client-server model. You have to go from a peer-to-peer decentralized model for these applications to scale. Otherwise, we are not going to get to where we want to get to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can move on to our next question, but again, give you some background. So last week, I was honored to be invited by Tom Furness for virtual fireside chat. And Tom said there was he called that the elephant in the room. So what's that? Let me show you two pictures. So the left side, you can say that ChatGPT is like being loved by, the mother, and the metaverse is sort of like put aside, and the NFT is just sink under the water. And the right side is like, well, rest in peace, metaverse. Just 3 years, right? 2021 to 2023. So the question is that I would say, what's the relationship between AI and metaverse? Well, AI steals the spotlight of metaverse, or actually instead boosts the development of metaverse. So that's also the question that we have been addressing recently through our IEEE Metaverse Congress series, but also I'd like to take this opportunity to ask our all-star panelists your opinions.
Well, maybe I'll start. Obviously, the generative AI could be used to create content. Think of like an avatar teacher. It can actually generate custom content for each student because everybody has a different understanding. We come from different backgrounds. Like you have to provide, custom content. So you can imagine like metaverse where you have a teacher. It's the same. It's not a linear content. It's a custom content created by generative AI. Maybe it'll ask you questions and then understand, where you're coming from. So that's one. And the other crazy thing that we've been thinking about is like, I don't know how many of you have heard the music generated by AI. Have you listened to the music? Some interesting music, and of course images. It's posted everywhere, and even now they're talking about videos. Can you imagine like a metaverse created by an AI, custom to you, what you like, your desires? You could be completely lost in it, right? That sounds like Matrix now. That could be the real hallucination. Like, it's creating a metaverse that just, you lose yourself. Like, you think that's the real thing. Anyway, I'll stop here. But my conclusion, my take is like, I think AI would help metaverse in terms of, it'll complement the development of metaverse. Yeah.
Okay, I will go next, I guess. So, one of the things I get often confused is sometimes we refer to these terminologies as a technology or sometimes as an application, right? A lot of time, and I look at AI as a driver to a lot of applications. So I look at it as a foundational, fundamental element to whatever application that you pick, and I pick Metaverse as one of the applications. So from that perspective, I don't think AI is going to compete with the Metaverse, like what it is doing for everything else, it is going to accelerate, right? So I look at, at least at this point of time, I'm looking at Metaverse as more at the application level with AI kind of feeding into it and accelerating the progress of it, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of the tools in the toolkit. we see it a lot helping in terms of actually scaling the early stages of content development, and like on the UGC side, that it's going to get a lot easier for people who don't have a full development team and hundreds of millions of dollars and artists on staff to be able to do things. That creator tooling that helped earlier versions of the internet explode with creativity, where a bunch of people could build digital storefronts and they could, we started to connect with each other across continents. Like AI is going to help accelerate that, and it's a tool to help accelerate it. But I do think there's a really interesting question. It goes back to we talk about this a lot from the blockchain side of things in terms of verification, and making sure we understand where things are coming from and that we're tracking them. This is going to be a major issue because, when these neural networks are created and when we have these large language models and there's 30 trillion inputs going in, like, I'm not convinced that we're even sure of the weighting systems that are allowing them to pull data and give you an answer. And so I think that we kind of got ahead of ourselves there, and we're fascinated by how far we've gotten. But there is some infrastructure that we need to kind of go back and get right for Web3 to really be able to deliver the kind of humanity side of things that we need to keep intact.
So there's another angle. Maybe Neil might talk to you too. So you're tied in. NVIDIA's got their own version of this. They call it the Omniverse, right?
Yeah.
And it's more focused on technologists, engineers, it seems like. They're using it to design factories, designing products. There's concepts like digital twins, right? How do you make something and emulate something else? So, that's using both artificial intelligence and graphical display technologies, in order to be able to do something better. You could also imagine the same kind of technology, and people have written about this, is creating a model view, an avatar, maybe a cognitive digital twin that acts in some regard like you are, which could be another whole, which, if that was actually useful, could be an extremely interesting thing, and especially the metaverse or something that's a graphical display of this avatar in its use would be the method of making it happen. So things like that could be, an enormous accelerator.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think at its core, the metaverse has kind of a sway over the industry because it's the combination of multiple disruptive technologies. They're all coming together kind of at the same time, and it's going to create some really interesting opportunities. We can't really identify the 20-year plan, but we know something interesting is going to happen. And so I think, and it's not just because I work for NVIDIA, I think AI is probably the most important because it's most useful across multiple domains. We mentioned user-generated content, and security, but also natural user interfaces, semantic scene understanding. It's just going to be used everywhere. So it's going to be the engine for the metaverse. There are other things too, of course, 3D graphics and processing and Web3 and XR. And I know this is an XR conference, so I'll probably get ejected, but I think AI is probably even more important than XR for the metaverse. The hype cycles that you were hinting at I like your slide, but I think you see it a lot in the press. Particular people in the media, they latch on to one particular technology, and that goes through a hype cycle, and they say, okay, that's it. NFTs are going down negativity right now, therefore the metaverse is dead. And they lose the larger picture that the metaverse is actually the combination of a whole bunch of different technologies.
But we've seen machine learning has been going on for ages, right? It's part of what, to your point, is driving is our semantic understanding. You can't do it without machine learning. So, that's been going on, but the reason why I think this time around it really struck a chord was that it seemed to be able to simulate a human response in a way that people, it resonated emotionally suddenly as oh, wait a minute. This isn't just the thing that's silently powering all of the things I use every day that I don't pay any attention to. It can talk like me. And that got scary, I think.
Just check the facts.
Yeah, totally.
So where is Web3 in this picture? I don't see Web3.
Well, I think Web3
Is it under
lacking,
NFT?
right?
It's under NFT.
We're resurrecting.
Yeah. But I think there's another, I agree with all of you, you just said, I think that's from the supply side that AI is going to help with the supply side of Metaverse in terms of generating content, in terms of driving various virtual characters. But I also have an additional view. I think AI could also help with the demand side. So maybe not everybody will agree with me. So my point is that, let's say we are talking about AI is going to replace human labors, right? Like with ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, lots of human labors are going to be replaced. That is not necessarily a bad thing. But anyway, so like some people, if they are really interested in work, they may need new opportunities, and where we can accommodate, create those new opportunities. And some other guys, we can just enjoy like fewer working hours and more leisure time, and where we can accommodate those needs for killing your time, right? If we are talking about the physical world, we will hit another wall, which is sustainability. We do not have so many natural resources to accommodate people's needs for killing your time, enjoy your life. But those kind of things, new job opportunities and accommodation for your needs for killing your time could be much easier being handled, being accommodated in virtual worlds, in other words, metaverses. So I think previously, before the rise of AI, basically this March, lots of things happened. So many people were feeling like, okay, metaverse is not really a rigid demand, so why we need a metaverse? But moving forward, after AI is replaced more and more human labors, I would say AI is working for us, right? Helping relieve us from lots of labors. Then we can start with like a 3-day weekend or maybe 4-day weekend. Then metaverse could be eventually something we really need to help us find more job opportunities or enjoy our leisure time. So that's my another opinion. I don't know, like our panelists would want to say something.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is perspective, right? Like we have been in the pre-metaverse era, we are going through a metaverse era. I think our next generation is looking at these technologies completely differently. Even when my kids interact with technology, it's significantly different to how I interact with technology, right? So I think we are defining certain things from our lens. I think their lens is going to be very, very different to the way we see it. And hence some of these things that we perhaps put in the concerns bucket might just be second nature for them, right? So.
Yeah, like what, 3 billion people are playing games? Is that 3, like, well, it's not, probably not us, it's a different age group. Like I think it's less than 35, like, 3 billion people on the spending like what, more, like 5-6 hours per day on a game.
Yeah, maybe sometimes we need to redefine what is work, right? If we define work as something you are contributing to other people, contributing to other people's experience, then playing game itself is a job, right? Because you join the multiplayer game and the other guy's experience will be better. So it's a contribution, then it's a work, right?
Hopefully you get paid for it.
Well, yeah, as long as you can eat. Yeah. So, but it does bring up the whole idea: what is work going to be like in the future? And what will work be like when you're using AI tools? When you're doing things with your own remote reality, you can do telepresence. You don't necessarily have to be somewhere. You can operate equipment remotely. All these things are coming together. What about when you're working in outer space? Because that's another thing that's going to be happening very soon. Technology gets rid of jobs, but it seems like it also creates new jobs, new opportunities. And that's, what are those going to be like? And for IEEE, one of the big things I think is, because there's a lot of academics in IEEE, how are we going to train the next generation for the jobs of the future?
Well, I think a third view I'd like to add and also ask our panelists is that I think AI will also help the further development, metaverse will also help the further development of AI. So an example is that like in autonomous driving sector, every company has been testing their algorithms, testing their cars in virtual worlds. And now, along with the rise of large language models, people recognize that towards the so-called AGI, artificial general intelligence, we need something so-called like a multimodal data, right? And there's also a new hot topic called embodied AI. So which means like AI, in order to train an AI, it's not cost effective to put that in a robot and let the robot work around the physical world. It might be more cost effective and also less risk to put that in the virtual world, which means the further development of AI, particularly towards the AGI, will need a metaverse to provide the environment for training and for those kind of feedback, things like data sets, things like that. Neil?
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, the autonomous driving that you mentioned, they're being trained, well, not totally, but a lot of the training data that is being used is generated, not tracked from the real world. Yeah. So it is a kind of a positive feedback loop. People often ask me, what is the most freaky metaverse demo you've seen so far? And it is having a virtual metaverse environment where you're training a robot that's been physically simulated, both the physics and as well as the visuals, and you're programming this robot in the virtual space. Then you lift that program out and you drop it into the digital twin, the actual physical robot, and it does exactly the right thing. It's incredible. And when you see it the first time, it's like, wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, I prepared another question. So we know metaverse is sort of like a mixture of lots of things. When we look at the metaverse landscape, which is also the landscape of metaverse, I would say the ecosystem or the industry, we have so many pieces, we need to put them together, like computation, like storage. I know Tom Coughlin, you are an expert of storage and communications for sure, data, intelligence, and we have a digital finance and economy, how to create virtual worlds, particularly persistent virtual worlds, and also we are in AWE, so we have to talk about XR. So XR is basically about senses and actions, virtual and real senses and actions for human creatures, non-player characters, and AI and machine, those kind of things. And so many pieces. My question is that, so how can we accelerate the development of metaverse? Well, whatever you want to address, technologies, ecosystems, markets, etc. So I'd like to hear some opinions from our panelists.
We should also add ethics and policy here as well. Yes. We need to educate the policymakers because I don't know how many of you heard about this. There was a Senate hearing on ChatGPT that was a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of, now there's a lot of fear, right? I mean, how do you responsibly use, generative AI? And now people are at that level thinking how do you responsibly do things like technology? And same thing will apply here, responsible metaverse or ethics in metaverse. We got to develop the policy, help the policymakers in terms of, I'm sure you heard about harassment in metaverse. Anyways, I will add technology is one part, but we also have to take care of the policy side of it so that it can be deployed safely. Yeah. Large scale, right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tom. Yeah, so I look at it as 3 layers, right? One is the protocols itself, like the hyperspace, transaction protocol, then the applications. But coming back to Ramesh's point, and that's what I was going to make, what is the societal impact, right? So the technology will be there, but you want to, if I use Ori's words, I don't know what exactly he said, everywhere, everybody, all the time, or something he had, how he wants XR to be used, right? So I think the technology is there. But do we have the right parameters for the technologies to be used by everybody, right? For example, I think in the previous panel that Kronos had organized, I think there was a question on safe use of metaverse, children online safety. How do you do online age verification? And IEEE is looking at the socio-technical aspects of it. And I think that is what is going to decide how this technology will evolve and how it is going to be embraced and adopted. Because I think the technical piece of it is solved, but how do you manage the engagement of this technology with the society is what needs to be addressed. I think that's a significant problem, and that will decide the scalability of it. We see that in the AI world, we are going to see it in the metaverse world, and all emerging technologies for that matter. We have, because it's no longer a conversation between B2B, given the advent of smartphones, tablets, the conversation of technology adoption with the the common man or woman has increased greatly, right? So children are behaving as adults, they are using technology pretty significantly. So in that context, how do you manage these issues of verification, identity, privacy, everything that goes along with it? Thank you.
So I recognize I might be biased, but I think helping develop the needed interoperability standards, because no matter which direction you come at the metaverse from, whether it's getting all these diverse technologies to work together, that needs interoperability. Whether it's breaking down the silos between separated applications today so they can become part of a larger networked economy, which is good for everybody. That's the very essence of interoperability. And we've been talking about building Web 3.0. Now, the web is a platform that is entirely built on open standards. So whichever way you come, interoperability standards are the key. So call out to everyone, get engaged and involved with helping develop and specify and give requirements and use cases to your friendly local standardization organization.
Like IEEE.
Like IEEE.
And like Metaverse Standards Forum. I'd like to echo what Neil said back to my cube. I said I want to make everybody equally unhappy. But you say the top phase is like association is around everything. So associations like IEEE and like Metaverse Standards Forum is sort of like a catalyst or let's say amplifiers to help the industry put everything together, make everything work together. So I think that's something I'd like to echo. So yeah.
I'm going to assume, because most of us here have worked in the industry and understand generally the technical stack and the challenges that we have in front of us in developing the things that we want to see in the world. However, I would say that one of the biggest things that we see a lack of is a real understanding of design and design practice. And like a lot of engineering-led organizations are obsessed with the technology, and we're talking to ourselves. And the truth is, like, when it comes to how you get to mass adoption, it involves actually instituting a design practice where you really take the time to understand and apply vertical focus to how can you use a certain technology to solve a real problem for a specific customer. And in those moments is where you find that real refinement of interaction that leads to the level of satisfaction that makes people pick up their iPhone every 5 seconds. So we all look at Apple and we all go like, wow, they do it every time. Like, they didn't get there first, but they do it every time. And that's why, because they've always privileged design. And so I think that's missing sometimes from the emerging tech conversation.
I love that, Rebecca. Thank you. It's so easy to get intoxicated by technology. And we're drinking the Kool-Aid right now when we see these things that are unfolding. And it's thrilling as a technologist, and I put the headset on, I go from being 80-year-old down to being a 12-year-old. And that's cool and wonderful. But one of the things that I think we have to realize is that we have to ask the question, so what? Yes, we have the what, but so what? But I think we need to have both sides. We need to have the technology push, and we need to have the applications pull. And really, in the end, it's the applications. What does it do? What does it fix? Does it make us better? Are we happier? Are we healthier? And that should be the pulls. Now, what goes in the middle? So you have these two things going on, the tension between the push and the pull. And in the end, we need to ask a question, what if we could do this based upon those societal drivers, those real issues down there? And then we look at our technology toolkit, which includes all of these things we talked about, and then see if we could come up with prototypes and test them, do the design. And then we have proof that it works. And in the end game, that's the only thing that's going to survive anyway. Everything else is going to be a flash in the pan because it won't have anything to sustain it economically or from a fundamental societal driver. So I think we have to look at the big picture, the push and the pull. Got to do both of them right, I believe.
Yeah. Fantastic.
That's a wonderful way to end things. Thank you so much to the panel. Please applause for the panel. Thank you so much. Please
I can-
go ahead to the mic if you have some additional questions for our guests. We have 10 minutes for questions. Thank you so much.
So if I can make a small announcement, we are going to talk about another new IEEE program, Metaverse Acceleration and Sustainability Association, day 3, Friday. So join us at the main stage, 3:20 p.m., June 2nd. So are we having some time? Yeah, we still have 10 minutes.
10
Okay.
minutes.
So we can take some questions from the audience, right? So any questions from over there?
There's one on the back. You need a mic? There's a mic here.
Could you go to the mic, please? Just thank you so much. Thank you.
How do you see using identity management in VR and AR? Like HTC has sort of embraced it a little bit, but when you look at any other player in the space, the login process and security around that is a huge burden, especially when you have users and you want to enable UGC. The users may not care about creating maybe 90% of them, but you want to ease that flow and make it so that there's a real easy gateway, and I feel like that's a huge burden. So what solutions do you see for that?
What was the burden? Sorry, I missed that.
Identity management,
identity.
especially headset-based.
Hi. I'm going to answer this one. So there are a bunch of companies out there, and this is happening. This is one of the things on the Web3 side that, like, we've really taken ownership around. I will say no one's nailed it yet. It's a really complex issue. And then there are also questions of how it works cross borders, right? Like, we have a great partnership with HTC, and we've had this conversation too of like, how does that work from here where we're trying to go self-sovereign identity to places where it's sovereign identity, and how do you create those pegs on the back end that allow you to do that? I think some of the solutions that we see, and actually Lamina One is going to put out a white paper on this in just a couple of weeks, that not only is about sort of our perspective on it, but an analysis of all the different methodologies there are out there on how you can address identity. But we see the same vision that you do, which is that the onboarding process is stifling. I mean, and it's scary. It's not only stifling, but like, it's scary. It's not like, I don't know how to do it. It's, I'm terrified to do it, because at every step of the way, there's really inflammatory, cautionary language about what could happen, right? So we know we need to alleviate that. And the goal is to use maybe some of the social platforms and some of the existing platforms as an initial point, but they don't actually hold the data on the back end. Like, they don't hold the identity like they do. Like, there's a couple of methods out there right now where you can use Google to do this, but they don't actually hold the data from that on the back end. It's just a verification point, and then it's kind of your own, right? So we talk about this with Twitter handles. Can we do it with a Twitter handle? Like, there's all sorts of methodologies that I would just tell you it's not figured out yet, but it is top of mind as a problem that needs to be solved, and we know that the onboarding is particularly awful. So it's not a satisfactory answer, but we don't know yet. But there are a lot of great companies out there, so.
So can I add to that, please? Yeah. So IEEE is actually working on a standard called 2958 that is on decentralized identity and access management framework based on DIDs and verifiable credentials. So this is a work in progress, and I think the best way to shape that work is to be part of that work. So I would request if you can join that. It is driven by the industry, and I know that it's a very serious problem that we need to solve today.
Do you have to be an IEEE member to do that?
No, you don't need to have any form of membership. You can join this working group and participate and observe the working group.
Yeah. Well, following Sri just said, maybe you have to bear with me to give you a brief update about what IEEE has been doing in terms of the driving metaverse. So we have been organizing the IEEE Metaverse Congress series. The website is metaverse.ieee.org. Collectively, we have already attracted more than 120,000 audience all over the world. And the purpose is to provide a comprehensive global view and also timely view for Metaverse. So you can say we have been started with discussing definitions of the Metaverse, Then we started discussing decentralization versus centralization. And then latest sessions, we were addressing like what's the relationship between AI and the metaverse. And also we have several standards projects initiated explicitly about the metaverse, like we have the standard for metaverse terminology and the taxonomy 2048, and 1760 and .1 are about ethically aligned design for metaverse. We also have the identity framework 3812.1. And the IEEE, in addition to standards projects, we have something we call that industry connections programs, which basically are about anything around standards, but not standards development itself. We call that pre-standardization, post-standardization, and core standardization. So we have persistent computing for metaverse, trying to address how to enable a persistent virtual world. We have decentralized metaverse initiative, trying to make sure that decentralization will be happening in the right way. And there are a whole bunch of IEEE standards which are related to metaverse, but are not explicitly named after metaverse. So Sri and his team, we have been maintaining a comprehensive list on the metaverse.IEEE.org, so you can stay tuned there. And lastly, I'd like to say that we are preparing to launch a new program. We call that Metaverse Acceleration and Sustainability Association, MASA. So the purpose is to take the opportunity to accelerate the development of a metaverse and to make sure that will be happening in a sustainable way and also contribute to greater sustainability. So we will be delivering roadmaps, standards, and like a conformity assessment. Open source, that is very important. It was mentioned at the Metaverse Standards Forum session this noon, and open source reference implementations, and of course, pilot applications. And also we want to address public awareness and diversity and inclusion. That's very important as well. Also, to further enhance the ecosystem, we want to set up a digital assets pool and exchange. So we will be talking more about this on Friday, like I put on the screen, 3:20. Meet us in the the main stage, Mission City Ballroom. So that concludes my advertisement, and we have 3 minutes left. I'd like to give our panelists, each of you, some final remarks about, let's say, your vision and the passion about the future of Metaverse or Web 3.0, whichever you want, or both.
So I think the technologies, the potential here is enormous. You know, it's a matter of how do we do it in a way that enhances life rather than making it a nightmare. And so it seems to be standards and getting some capabilities of telling. It's great to have fiction, but you don't want everything to be. We want to know when something's real or not real. And that's, we're creating an artificial reality, but we also want to know when we're in that and not. And I think that's a really important one. I think standards could help in doing that. Also, just developing our technology with that in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all see the potential, that's why we're all here, of the technology to be truly additive in a really positive way. But I think also the recognition of where it could go very, very easily is important as well. And it's important to really model the types of experiences that we want to see in the world. And so as much as we talk about tech, we should spend every bit as much time talking about content and the types of experiences that we want to see and we want to be able to offer. And so a real emphasis on supporting people that make those great experiences. From like education is always tragically underfunded, and they're some of the absolute best use cases for VR and AR. And this sort of seamless intersection between physical and digital realities, there's so much that can be done there. But we need to invest in it. We need to invest in the right things, not just the things that we think are going to be 100x quick hit wins that are temporarily entertaining.
So I recently went back to the UK for my mom's 85th birthday, and this is a true story. We were talking about stuff I've been doing with the metaverse, and she goes, "Why are you working on the metaverse? That's going to be terrible." And I think that's actually a lot of people out there, that's their view. Why are you working on this? It's going to be dystopian. It's going to be separating people from reality. I think it's our responsibility, we're privileged to be here helping to build this new platform. It's our responsibility to make sure it's not dystopian. And we need all our help together to make that happen.
I agree with Neil and Rebecca and Tom.
Yeah, I think definitely XR, Metaverse, whatever you call it, I think it has great potential. I think Rebecca, yeah, I was going to say training too. I think it has immense potential. And COVID clearly identified what remote participation can bring. And immersive remote participation will take it that much more further. I think a couple of things that we didn't touch upon today. One is the open source and how we can have the tech stack built in the open source. I think that's an important point. Today we are talking about AI and Metaverse. Probably in a couple of years, we'll be talking about quantum and Metaverse. And that will be an all new game, right? So.
Yeah, closing comments. I mean, Rebecca talked about education. You mentioned about training. A couple of weeks ago, I read a survey. The leading use case for Metaverse is fashion industry right now. So I'll stop there.
I like that stopping. Yeah, that's great.
Okay,
Thank you.
so
Thank you so much,
yeah,
very much. Thank
let's
you,
give a
panelists.
round of
Appreciate it.
applause
Thank you
for
very
our
much.
all-star panelists. And lastly, feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in any of our efforts I mentioned. Thank you so much.